you've had your little moment. Thank you for not leaving the room. That's really appreciated. And thank you for coming back, more to the point. We still have some travellers out there, so we're hoping that they're going to get through. Was it motorway, was it, Hilary? Did you? And an accident as well. 3 hours from Worthing. What was she doing, Andy? It only took us an hour and 5 minutes from Horsham. We were aware that, yeah. Anyway, can I just draw your attention to the front? Phil is going to talk to us now about his topic. Rather fascinatingly, he's got the title Now and Then. I said to him, okay, you've come a long way from Hereford to talk to us about now and then. Can you give me an idea of what the theme might be? Some sort of idea. I think you all know Phil. There was no indication. He said, just go and get me a jug of water and an empty glass. So dutifully, I have done that. And I'm now going to hand over to Phil to talk about now and then and his jug of water and his empty glass. Phil, it's all yours.
Well, as the Americans would say, good afternoon, brethren. My question, of course, is how would you describe this? Is it half empty? Is it half full? Because two people can look at exactly the same image and come to quite different conclusions, can't they? If you're just looking at the bottom half, as it were, and you think, well, is that all I get? Then it's half full. I'm sorry, it's half empty. But if you think, but it's going to rise up to the top and then I'll have a complete glass, then of course you think it's half full and will become full at some stage. And I think this is like a illustration of life in many ways. And what I'd like to do is look at various biblical characters and see if we'd put this question to them, what do you think their answer would have been? Would their life at that time have been half empty or half full? So we're going to look at Adam. What better place to start? His wife, Eve. Abraham, the father of the faithful. The Israelites in Egypt. Not all of them, you'll understand. The prophet Jonah. A minor prophet, of course. What nonsense. What prophet could have been minor? Oh, I see, he was in a fish, so he was underground, minor. No, that doesn't work, sorry. The Apostle Paul, and of course Jesus, and then quite importantly, ourselves. We're just going to take a snapshot of each one. Don't worry, we will be there for lunch in time. He's really worried about this, honest, I can tell. So, let's have a look at them first of all, shall we? To Adam, God said, the ground is cursed for your sake. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. And if we try and put ourselves in, as it were, in that picture, as if we were there at the time, looking at this, or indeed if we were ourselves Adam, think of it. He had been in literally the paradise of God, and now he was being thrown out. And he was being told, for the rest of your life, mate, you are going to have to work so hard just to eat, because the ground is cursed because of what you've done. Half empty or half full, do you think? I reckon if you'd asked Adam at the time, he would have said, half empty, and would have assumed perhaps it was going to stay that way. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. I find that interesting too. I wonder if Adam realised that he was dust. He wasn't conscious, was he, when he was dust, as it were? And so he had to believe what he was told. But he didn't look like dust, did he? Reminds me of a joke I heard very recently told by a rabbi, that says it all, where an atheist, and we've heard about atheists this morning, challenged God and said, look, God, you claim that you made man out of dust. That's nothing. We can do exactly the same. So, what's the big beef? And God said to the atheist, okay, show me. So the atheist went outside and he started scrubbing the back, got a load of dust out, brought it in, and God said, get your own dust. Think about it. That's quite deep. Get your own dust. Where did the dust come from? Anyway, it is a typical Jewish joke, apparently. So that was the now, the here and now, if you like, for Adam, wasn't it? Okay. What about Mother Eve? He said, I will greatly increase your sorrow and your conception. In pain you shall bear sons, and your desire shall be toward your husband, and he shall rule over you. And I think that idea of in sorrow and in pain bearing sons, I mean, obviously it speaks, doesn't it, to the actual act of childbirth, but I think it goes much wider than that, because what did Eve actually encounter a few years down the line? She encountered her firstborn murdering her secondborn. That was painful. That was agony, mental. She'd been through the physical, and now she'd got the mental agony of this to contend with. So for her, I would suggest the here and now was half empty. So they were going to be expelled from the Garden of Eden, the paradise of God. The cherubim and a flaming sword that turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. So one would assume from that there was every possibility that they could have lived forever. But they were being banned now from the source of that. What have they lost? Basically, they'd lost everything. For them, the here and the now was definitely a glass half empty. All right, let's move on to Abraham. Abraham's journey. He went from Ur of the Chaldees, did he not, to Haran, where he stopped for a bit. And then his dad died, and he moved on down to Canaan. I'm no expert in geography, but as far as I can make out, okay, that journey from Ur to Canaan is about 1,500 miles, and it took him, because of his stay in Haran as well, many years. I wonder what Abraham thought about when the Lord said to him, go from your country, your kindred, and your father's house, which strictly speaking he didn't do maybe if he took his dad with him, to the land that I will show you. Yes, sir. What land? To the land that I will show you. Where is it? I will show you. He didn't have a clue where he was going when he set out, as far as we can understand. I wonder what his reaction was. Well, for a start, he was to become a migrant. That was forced on him. So, and the here and now, I suspect, would have been on the negative side in his mind, even though he had faith and hoped for the positive. But that was a tough thing to ask him, wasn't it? To leave everything that he had. And he was a septuagenarian. In his 70s. You know that. And the journey, as I said, was 1,500 miles. These weren't easy things, were they? And he was told to abandon virtually everything that he'd known. And as far as we know, he would have had a very comfortable life where he was. Apparently was a university city equivalent in our day. So glass half empty or half full? You become a migrant, and here are your marching orders. I'll tell you, when I'm ready to tell you, where you're going. Okay, what about the Israelites in Egypt? They set taskmasters over the Israelites to afflict them with heavy burdens. They built for Pharaoh store cities, Pithom and Ramesses. So they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves and made their lives bitter with hard service. Can there be any doubt what their opinion would have been of life at that time? Get us out of here. We'll see in a moment, though, a totally human reaction. But their reaction surely to their, as I say, their present here and now was a glass half empty. And then there's this intriguing story. The king of Egypt, i.e. Pharaoh, said to the Hebrew midwives, I assume the Egyptians had midwives as well, but he said to the Hebrew midwives, when you serve as midwife to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, NHS, take notice, if it is a son, you shall kill him. But if it is a daughter, she shall live. These midwives would have, of course, been Israeli. They weren't about to do that, were they, to their own kind? And we know that they came up with this excuse, didn't they? That, well, you know, the Hebrew women get on with childbirth so quick that it's all done by the time we get there. Apparently Pharaoh swallowed it, so fair enough. But for them, at that time, being told you kill every male child that is born, that would have been grim, wouldn't it, to them? But it went further, because then Pharaoh, when he realised perhaps that he was being deceived, he commanded all his people, not the midwives, all his people, so presumably men and women, he commanded them, every son that is born to the Hebrews you shall cast into the Nile, but you shall let every daughter live. So he bypassed the Hebrew midwives. And we heard, didn't we, from Duncan, how God works through human beings. And of course God worked through this command, didn't he? Because a certain young baby was, if you like, thrown into the Nile and rescued by Pharaoh's daughter and then brought up in the royal household. Tough on Pharaoh, I say. But it's a lovely way, isn't it, round, that God sort of twisted it round and used that very thing. But again, I guess for all the pregnant mums in Egypt of the Israelites, the here and now was not a good prospect, was it? All right, let's go to Jonah. God gives him a commission, go to Nineveh, and so he takes the first boat he can find and goes in the opposite direction. God won't notice, you know, he won't be able to find me. But he soon realised, when he landed up inside this, whatever it was, large animal, when God says, Jonah, go to Nineveh, he means it. It's amazing how far God will go to teach me a lesson. Isn't it amazing what you can find on the internet But I thought it actually summarised this very well indeed. So, at that particular moment, when he's sitting inside for the 3 days and the 3 nights, I doubt whether if you'd said to him, well, come on, Jonah, what do you reckon? Half full or half empty? I think half empty. And the Apostle Paul, still called Saul, still breathing threats and murder, notice that, threats and murder, against the disciples of the Lord, asked for letters to the synagogues at Damascus. I don't quite know why. Why would Israel have any dominion over a Syrian city? Can't answer that. So that if he found any belonging to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. And so for our fellow believers of that era, if you'd asked them, well, what do you reckon on your life, when they knew that this Pharisee Saul was on the rampage, they'd have said, surely a glass half empty. Let's just go back all those people again, because that's only half the story. Look, we know that Adam found life was going to be difficult, and he would have said the glass is half empty. But look, they were told, were they not? This, of course, is from the New Testament, but things were explained to them, I'm sure, that in such a way that they could understand at least the outline of what was going to happen. The first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam became a life-giving spirit. So they were being told, if you like, I guess the same gospel that was preached to Abraham, and that we are told specifically of, aren't we, in the New Testament. Do you think Adam and Eve will be in the kingdom? I'd rather think they will be. Yes, they messed up, haven't we all? Yes, why couldn't they have repented and been forgiven? I think it would be, it's not for me to tell God what to do, of course, but I think it would be very fitting, wouldn't it, that the first Adam and the last Adam are both in the kingdom. It's just, it's just, what do they say, squares the circle? Never understood that. Right. So the glass will be full. And to Eve, this business of pain and sorrow and suffering, physical and mental, I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Surely there is you have to fish for it, but there is the message, isn't it, of what was going to happen in the future, and the glass would be filled up. That would be the then, and they will have had to wait for this, won't they, for thousands and thousands of years. Expulsion from the Garden of Eden and the cherubim guarding the way to the tree of life. He who has an ear, the Spirit says to the churches, to the one who conquers I will grant to eat of the tree of life. Adam tried to eat of the tree that was forbidden, but now that tree of life, which was then guarded as a result, will be available, which is in the paradise of God. The now, but the then to come, the hope. Remember Abraham, 70 years old, 1,500 miles, leaving everything behind. In you, Abraham, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. And I'm sure we're all well aware of all the other promises which elaborated on that and gave more detail. And yes, certainly the gospel was preached to Abraham, and he believed it. So he went to his death knowing that he would be resurrected, because he hadn't inherited, had he, the whole land, and he hadn't lived forever, but that was what was promised. The Israelites in Egypt? Oh, bad news for them. The Lord will bless you, talking to the Israelites, in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. And that actually came to pass, did it not? Some 40 years later, and so on, reached its zenith under King David and King Solomon. But of course there is a much greater fulfillment of that yet to come, which unfortunately those Jews now in Israel, modern Israel, and many Jews around the world don't understand. They haven't realised. But that's the then. That's the future which is coming. Our friend Jonah, the prophet, that was an experience, wasn't it, for him? But I think this is a lovely comment by God. Should not I pity Nineveh, that great city, in which there are more than 120,000 persons who do not know their right hand from their left, and much cattle? God isn't interested in animals. Really? Aren't they part of his creation as well? And he mentions it there, doesn't he? Yes, the Ninevites he wanted to save, and he didn't want the cattle then to be destroyed. So from that point of view, again, it was fulfilled in Jonah's time, but perhaps wouldn't have been if he'd actually gone away and there had been no warning message and they hadn't repented. Now it still came, we know it came upon them, didn't it, eventually, because they presumably relapsed. Saul, breathing threats and murder against the believers, but he is a chosen instrument of mine to carry my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. And again, that came true, obviously within Paul's lifetime, because of the ministry which he conducted. That was, if you like, the then, with a warning. But I will show him how much he must suffer for the sake of my name. And so, in a sense, there was still a glass half empty for Paul. But we know how positive he was about the whole thing. And he counted, didn't he, all things, whatever suffering, whatever hardship he had to undergo, it doesn't matter, he virtually said, as long as I can get this gospel out to those who God is calling. That's what's important. What's important to us. Luke 2, verse 42. When he was 12 years old, we're looking at whether Jesus would have considered the glass half empty or half full now. When he was 12 years old, after 3 days, they found Jesus in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. 12 years old. Asking intelligent questions which surprised the doctors of law, if you like, at the time. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. Who is this guy? He hasn't been to college, he's not old enough. I mean, he's a carpenter's son. Well, actually, we don't know who his father was, but, we don't talk about that. They were amazed at his understanding. That happened in the now, if you like. Luke 4, verses 18 to 19. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has appointed me to proclaim the news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour. Jesus, of course, quoting what the Jews call the Jewish Bible, what we know as the Old Testament. Again, that was in the now. That was happening there and then. Luke 4:21, today, Jesus says, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing. I wonder how many of them believed that at the time. Luke 9:22, the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and on the third day be raised. Glass half empty or half full? Here's something to think about maybe. At what stage do you think Jesus really understood what his future was? Do you think he knew it as a 12-year-old boy? I suspect he probably did. And he lived with that. And in the 3.5 years of his ministry, obviously it came closer and closer. And the number of times that he told his disciples about it, they didn't get it, did they? I wonder if we would have been any better at the time. I don't think so, do you? But he was talking about the then. And in a sense, the glass would then be perhaps absolutely full, but it would be getting to the brim. Luke 18:32-33, he will be delivered over to the Gentiles and will be mocked and shamefully treated and spit upon. And after flogging him, which, by the way, as you probably know, in itself was often a Roman death sentence, and after flogging him, they will kill him. That for him was the now reality. Luke 24 verses 5-6, why do you seek the living among the dead? He's not here, but has arisen. That was the then. He'd accomplished it. He'd succeeded. Luke 24:46-47, thus it is written that the Messiah should suffer. And he was suffering right then, in the way that people treated him. But on the third day, rise from the dead, and that repentance and forgiveness of sins should be proclaimed in his name to all nations, beginning from Jerusalem. That would be the then. That would be the completion of the glass. So, we've got the Garden of Eden, more strictly speaking, I guess, the Garden in Eden, but the paradise of God. We've got Abraham, we've considered, the Israelites being mistreated in Egypt, Prophet Jonah, and the Apostle Paul. They all could have considered this idea, couldn't they, of their life at the time? Was it a glass half empty or half full? So what about us? Luke 9:23, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. That's quite obviously the now, isn't it? Luke 9:26, ashamed of whoever is ashamed of me and of my words. The time has come for judgment to begin at the house of God. That's the now. But what was Jesus actually referring to in the future? When the Son of Man comes in his glory and the glory of the Father and of the holy angels, he will be ashamed of those who had been ashamed of him. That would be the then. Luke 10:3, go your way, behold, I'm sending you out as lambs in the midst of wolves. That will be the now. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. The then. And isn't it easy for us as human beings to actually, well, we sort of say we believe it, but it perhaps doesn't mean as much as it should. It's the Father's good pleasure. Not that he's forced to. Oh, no, okay then. It's Yeah, he wants to. Like Duncan said, he's actually searching for people because he wants them. Brilliant. Luke 12:51-53, do you think that I've come to give peace on earth? No, I tell you rather division. For from now on, in one house there will be 5 divided, 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. And this next section is something that we've experienced in our own family. I'm talking personally now. They will be divided, father against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, daughter against mother, mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. That's the now to be contended with in this life now. Luke 21:16, you will be delivered up even by parents, brothers, relatives, and friends, and some of you they will put to death. Is that still a future prophecy to come true? That was the now, certainly to the people to whom it was spoken, and it may well be to us as well. 1 Corinthians 2:9, as it is written, what no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor the heart of man imagined, what God has prepared for those who love him. Quoting mainly from Isaiah 64:4, from of old no one has heard or perceived by the ear, no eye has seen, a God besides you who acts for those who wait for him. And may I give just a very brief aside here. Nor ear heard, no one has heard or perceived by the ear. Music has been a very, very large and important part of my life. Just ask my wife. I guess music can be different things to different people. I'm talking more what would be classified as classical music, I suppose. And when I read, nor ear heard, no one has heard or perceived by the ear what God has got prepared, I think to myself, better than J.S. Bach? Better than Sir Edward Elgar? Yeah, much better. Much better. And although that's almost a silly example, just racket that up into all other aspects of life. Whatever, it will be much better then. Revelation 5:9, they sang a new song. Music. New song. Saying, worthy are you to take the scroll to open its seals, for you were slain, and by your blood you ransomed people for God from every tribe, language, people and nation. Revelation 15:3, they sing the song of Moses and the song of the Lamb. I wonder what that song is. The song of the Lamb. I think Handel's Messiah might come in for a bit of a drubbing. Saying, great and amazing are your deeds, O Lord God Almighty, just and true are your ways, King of the nations. Ooh, I'm looking forward to that. Romans 8:28, we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good for those who are called according to his purpose. Yeah. Even what otherwise we might consider the rotten aspects of life, they all work together for good. Now they work for good. Sometimes it's difficult to see through it, isn't it? And appreciate it. James 1:12, blessed are they who remain steadfast under trial, for when they have stood the test, what? They will receive the crown of life which God has promised to those who love him. That's the then. That's the glass becoming full. But wait for it, there's more. It's easy, isn't it, to get down. especially if things are going tough. I don't know what you've had since I saw you last year, what your life has been like. I can't imagine it's been much different from mine, and there would have been some difficult things to contend with. And it's easy to sit down and just dwell on the past and get all depressed. And that's a shame. Because some other people did that we've already looked at. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt that cost nothing. Numbers 11 verse 5. There was the fish, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions and the garlic. Do you really think they had all those things in abundance? I don't think so. They were slaves. They were hard pressed. They hardly had time to eat, I would suspect. Look at it all. Fish, cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions and garlic. Oh, let's go back to Egypt. You've got to be joking. What an insult to God. So what about us then? Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. All that we encounter in this life that's rotten and difficult, it's going to go. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. When I was still teaching, a sixth form girl came to me with a clipboard in hand, and I think she must have been studying RE at the time. Please, sir, we've been asked to do a survey amongst the staff. Oh, yeah. About their favourite biblical passage or verses in the Bible. Stone me, I thought. Nearly fell through the floor. Oh, right, I said. Do you have a Bible there? Yes. Oh, great, When we opened it, I told her to open it up to this. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. Can you get your mind round that? That is difficult, isn't it? The dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. Right here on earth. And then this was my really favourite of favourite verses. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death shall be no more, neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more. Mother Eve, for the former things have passed away. Now and then, glass half full, glass half empty. That's better than that. Look. It's glass overflowing. You prepare a table before me. My cup overflows. Never mind about, is it half empty? Is it half full? No, mate. It's absolutely full and overflowing. It should be that, in that sense, it should still be that now, though it's difficult for us to, appreciate that perhaps. But it certainly is going to be then, isn't it? So let's all look forward to that day. Psalm 23 verse 5.
Absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much, Phil, for that. I found that incredibly powerful, very helpful in the context of what we're doing here today, but in our day-to-day lives as well. The idea of sharing that wonderful, wonderful message that sometimes we know the words, we know the message, we know what we're trying to share, but bringing it to life in that way. And the idea of a simple visual aid and just filling that up to overflowing. I love that picture at the end of the glasses stacked up on top of each other and they cascade over. And I wonder if there's something there actually. It just pops into my mind. The idea that the topmost glass bubbles over and fills the next one and the next one and the next one. And if we don't allow our glass to feel like it's full and to live our lives like we have lives flowing over, thinking to the future, Jesus, at that point of maximum challenge, the greatest difficulty, he looked to the future. And it was that joy of the future that got him through and allowed that life-giving water to overflow into our lives forever after. So lots of powerful messages in that. I said that we would break for lunch in good time for 1 o'clock. And I don't know if you're feeling... Welcome, by the way. Welcome. Round of applause for the arrivals. Just in time for lunch. Well done. Have you had a difficult and challenging journey? Oh, yes. How far have you come? Too far. So I'm guessing that you've probably come up the M4, which was fine. Was the M4 fine? And it's just the M25. And you got to the M25 and it all stopped. Is that fair? No? It was even worse than that. Go on, where have you come from? From South Wales, and it's been a long old journey. Well done for getting here. Delighted to have you with us. You've arrived just in time for lunch. So, something I thought it would be nice to do. Later on this afternoon, we'll have the chance to come together in prayer and to share prayers and to be led in prayers. I often don't find that very easy. I quite like to think about my prayers up front. So over the course of lunch, I would like you to grab the opportunity to jot down some of the things that you would like us to bring before our Father in prayer. There are lots of things, lots and lots of things. And I would like you just to jot them down, maybe on a post-it note. Steve hijacked my post-it notes. He's got them propping up the projector, which when I saw him do that, I thought, oh no, best laid plans and all that. There probably aren't enough here. Well, there are actually. There's enough there for everybody to jot something down. And I'd really love it if you took a moment to just come up, grab a post-it note, write down something that's on your heart, on your mind, something you would like us to pray for, and just stick them on the front of the stage here. Why not? Why not stick them on the front of the stage? Let's just stick them up there. And later on, we'll try to capture some of the things that people would like to have prayed about, some of the issues, some of the people, some of the situations. And we'll pray as a group, as a family, conscious that God is with us and listening to us as we pray. So if you're comfortable with that, I'd really welcome it. You may not wish to write it down. You might just put a symbol on there, a heart or a cross or something that just recognises that you've identified an issue that you want to have prayed for. You might not even want to write it down. You might just hold it in your heart. But later on this afternoon, we'll pray together. So these yellow post-it notes are extracted from under the projector and they're available for you to use. And if you stick them on here, that's great. We can use those. Now, after lunch, we're going to have a number of different talks. Duncan's going to talk to us about the Bible Companion app. I'm assuming that you all have the app on your smartphones, in which case you're way ahead of me. My son's despair of me, I have 3 of them, 25 years old, 23 years old and 15. And it's the 15-year-old that despairs the most. Dad, you've got no apps on your phone. Sam, that's because I have no idea how to get them on my phone. So one of Duncan's first tasks might be to encourage us to actually download the app. But you're probably up and running with it already. We're then going to have a talk from Liz Hemingray, who's going to talk to us about Lost and Found. And then we're going to open up for a bit of discussion about what we've heard today, what we are thinking about today, We might also encourage our latest visitor, our latest arrival, to have a little chat with us. Is that possible? Maybe much later on this afternoon. We'll tee that one up. But you're amongst friends here. We're just a family having a chat, having a bit of lunch and sharing some time together. So we'll see how that goes. And our aspiration is to sort of wrap up with tea around about 4:15, 4:30. So that's our plan. So I'm going to invite Steve just to draw this session to a close with some prayer and to give thanks for lunch, which we're going to share together. And although the clock at the back says it's 5 minutes to 1, I know that in the real world it's actually pretty close to 1. So Steve, would you like to just lead us in prayer?
And perhaps I could just mention one thing in connection with this. We're going to have a collection at lunchtime. A bag will be going around. If anyone wants to make a donation in there towards the cost, it costs about £350 to hire this place, and then the excess will go towards the work of Carelinks, obviously. If anyone wants to give money under gift aid, I've got some envelopes which you can complete and put your money inside. Thank you very much.
And actually, I've just been reminded, we'll also have a little talk. Did I mention about Riga winter welfare? So after lunch, we'll just have 5 or 10 minutes update on that. And I feel I have another update coming in on my... Do I have an update? No. It's turning me off. What can I say?